Liliana, what are the broader implications here? If Karl Rove is allowed to say, hey, I have absolute immunity, whether I'm working for the president or I'm not working for the president, I'm at Fox News and I have absolute immunity, what are the implications for that for the further administration, next administration, the one after that, and the balance of power between the executive and the legislative?
Well, I think that that's one of the big questions. It's really the reason so many people in this country want the president impeached. I mean, this administration has overseen this massive expansion of executive powers, and at the same time has sort of gone about remaking the Department of Justice in its own image. And that has, I mean, the issues that Roe was supposed to testify about before the Judiciary Committee were his role in the firing of the U.S. attorneys, which became a big scandal, the illegal hiring practices at the DOJ, which were totally politically motivated, and going after the prosecution of people like Alabama Governor Don Siegelman. And so we basically, the very people who are supposed to be enforcing the law are instead protecting the Bush administration. We saw that with Mukasey this week before the House Oversight Committee, also claiming executive privilege. So if you back up and you just look at the past few years, there are so many ways in which the Bush administration has gone to great lengths to insulate itself. And the big question for whether it's McCain or whether it's Obama is going to be, what are they going to do to roll back these massive expansive powers?
That's a great question, and I want to get back to what Obama might do in a little bit. But Marcy, if the Justice Department says you're right on the law, executive privilege doesn't apply, absolute immunity doesn't apply, but nada boo-boo, we're not going to do it anyway, okay? We're not going to arrest them. Does Congress have a right to arrest Karl Rove, and how would they do that?
Yeah, Congress has what's called inherent contempt, and they used it a lot up until about 1934. And what happens is basically Congress, after a committee says we're going to hold this guy in contempt, then Congress as a whole votes to hold the person in inherent contempt, and they get the sergeant at arms, and they send him to arrest the person. Now, there used to be a jail in the basement of the Capitol. There's not anymore. I think they should just get a shipping container and plunk it out down in front of the Capitol building and stick Karl Rove in it. But Congress still has that authority. It's been approved many times by the Supreme Court, and that is definitely something that people are talking about using with this instance of Rove blowing off Congress.
If the sergeant at arms, this Bill Livingood guy, goes and arrests Karl Rove, it is going to be the greatest day in American history. And by the way, and it's not just because he's, it's Karl Rove. It's because there's a rule of law here, and it's not being served. And we can't let that precedent stand, otherwise it's going to infect everything, and then we become undemocratic. Maureen has a good question from the audience, and I want to ask Liliana this. Maureen asks, how does it serve the committee's best interest by not pursuing the prosecution of Karl Rove? In other words, doesn't it make sense for the House Judiciary Committee to pursue this, and for the House overall to pursue this as far as they can take it?
Well, one would think, but I think that we've seen so many instances in the past several years of Congress sort of just falling short of doing its job to the full potential, when it comes to holding people accountable. I think that, when you look at, for instance, Kucinich's attempt to bring forth impeachment claims, there's a lot of political timidity, and I think that a lot of people are afraid of being cast as acting partisan, especially in an election year. But I think that's a very important question. I think we all grapple with that, how to challenge them to do their jobs.
All right, I got to ask all of you one final question here as we wrap up. It's a quick one. Given the possibility the Justice Department might one day enforce this, or a new Justice Department under McCain or Obama might, or Congress might actually send the sergeant at arms to go get Karl Rove, how likely is it actually? So let me go one by one. Marcy, will Karl Rove ever be arrested?
I think if by chance of fate Bush doesn't pardon Rove for all the things he's done illegal in the last 8 years, then I think in 2009 Rove might see the inside of a jail cell. But I kind of expect, after what Bush did with Scooter Libby, I kind of expect him to issue blanket pardons for everybody who's broken the law in his administration.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Liliana, does Karl Rove ever go to jail?
Yeah, I'm sort of with Marcy. I mean, I'm going to be a curmudgeon and say no.
Baratunde.
I don't think so, and I think it highlights the larger context that we're in. We have 2.3 million people in prison in this country, largely for nonviolent drug offenses. If they did something like this, if they're late to a parole hearing, they go back to prison. 1 in 4 prisoners in the world is American. And as an American, I think Karl Rove belongs in prison.
All right, well, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate the audience participation as well. And we appreciate your questions. And we're going to take your questions next week as well, not just for the bloggers, but for Senator Harry Reid when he comes in. And everybody remember, after the show, all the bloggers you just saw keep on blogging about this issue. So go to jackandjillpolitics.com where you can read Baratunde's blog about it. Go to alternate.org where you can read Liliana's blog. And of course, firedoglake.com is where Marcy blogs as Empty Wheel. So I want to thank all of you for joining us. And remember, you can participate throughout the week at meetthebloggers.org and send us questions for next week. And by the way, next week, we're going to have another show, of course, as we do every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll see you then. And until then, do something.